and provided an immense amount of influence. All of that happened and was a direct result of Jimmy Carter's absolutely terrible policy of basically capitulating to anything that the Shah wanted and not listening to the broad-based revolution in Iran. When it came to Afghanistan, Jimmy Carter was actually the person who embarked on the covert mission of providing direct support to the Mujahideen. Obviously, Ronald Reagan expanded that immensely during his time in office and provided an immense amount of weaponry, military arsenal, helicopter missiles like to shoot down Soviet helicopters and all that to the Mujahideen. But Jimmy Carter was the person who started that. They did it in an effort to draw the Soviets into...
Under Carter, the U.S. continued to support all over the world regimes that engaged in imprisonment of dissenters, torture, and mass murder in the Philippines, in Iran, and Nicaragua, and in Indonesia, where the inhabitants of East Timor were being annihilated in a campaign bordering on genocide. The New Republic magazine, presumably on the liberal side of the establishment, commented approvingly on the Carter policies. American foreign policy in the next 4 years will essentially extend the philosophies developed in the Nixon-Ford years. This is not at all a negative prospect. There should be continuity. It is a part of history. Carter had presented himself as a friend of the movement against the war, but when Nixon mined Hapong Harbor and resumed bombing of North Vietnam in the spring of 1973, Jimmy Carter urged that we give President Nixon our backing and support whether or not we agree with specific decisions. Once elected, Jimmy Carter declined to give aid to Vietnam for reconstruction despite the fact that the land had been devastated by American bombing. Asked about this at a press conference, Jimmy Carter replied that there was no special obligation on the United States to do this because the destruction was mutual. Considering that the United States had crossed half the globe with an enormous fleet of bombers and 2 million soldiers, and after 8 years left a tiny nation with over 1 million dead and its land in ruins, this was an astounding statement. One establishment intention perhaps was that future generations see the war not as it appeared in the Defense Department's own Pentagon Papers as a ruthless attack on civilian populations for strategic military and economic interests, but as an unfortunate error. Noam Chomsky, one of the leading anti-war intellectuals during the Vietnam period, looked in mid-1978 at how the history of the war was being presented in the major media and wrote that they were destroying the historical record and supplanting it with a more comfortable story, reducing lessons of the war to the socially neutral categories of error, ignorance, and cost.
An unwinnable stalemate, quagmire war, whatever you want to call it, in Afghanistan, and they were successful in doing so because this war, as we all know, it did in fact draw the Soviets into Afghanistan further than they already were to support their puppet state that they were supporting in Kabul, and it proved to be extremely successful because the war lasted 10 years, and by 1989, the war had ended, and the Soviet Union was crumbling before their very eyes. That was at the end of the Reagan administration, obviously. So Carter started this support for the Mujahideen,
which is a good thing. That was a good thing. Jackson Hinkle. So Jackson Hinkle has a video of how Jimmy Carter started the war on terror. Maybe the idea. He started the idea of the war on terror. Jimmy Carter's empire for 4 years, we never fired a shot. I heard Jimmy Carter brag about that, so seems, I mean, he's the president. He was against the imperial presidency, and I think that's fantastic. Holy fucking shit, are you kidding me? Versus a motherfucker like, a war hawk, even, whatever, Baby Bush, Donald, they're all kind of just always starting their new shit, right? We got an empire from somewhere, right? 750 military bases in 150 countries. That didn't just spring up overnight. So Reagan, a whole bunch, everybody added to the fucking problem, right? They all added to the goddamn problem. Let's just put it that way. Noam Chomsky said that every president post-World War II should be hung according to the Nuremberg standards, so that would be Jimmy Carter too. And so there's reasons to criticize Jimmy Carter, but Jimmy Carter is, he's kind of one of the holy presidents, isn't he? I would say he wasn't a very good, effective liberal president. I would say the last liberal president would have been Nixon and LBJ. So Carter should be criticized because he was, you know, very ineffective. Going to fight poverty, was going to legalize marijuana, you know, stop the imperial presidency. But here we are in empire, and here, 2021, poverty is all over the place, and marijuana is only legal in, you know, a dozen or so states. So Jackson Hinkle's argument is 3 points. He allowed the Shah into the U.S. So President Carter is going to allow the Shah. So Iran is going to have an Iranian revolution. They hate the fucking Shah. Flies. Fucking flies. Shoo fly. Don't you bother me. So he's had 3 reasons, right? Allowed Shah into the U.S., weapons sent to the Mujahideen to fight the Soviet Union imperialistic invasion, and the Iran-Iraq war. He said Jimmy Carter gave it the okay. He said that they sent the weapons to the Mujahideen, and Jimmy Carter allowed the Shah into the United States. I believe all those things happened, but I'm not for sure if that's why the war on terror. So the weapons to the Mujahideen. So you could say what? Because 9/11, the blowback. Giving weapons to the Mujahideen to fight the Soviet Union, that's a good idea. And I bet you that's what the Russians and the Chinese are doing today against us. Giving weapons to the enemies of us to get us out of Afghanistan. And strategically, that's a good place for the empire, is it not? So that was a good thing. Fucking Soviet Union, I mean, unless you're just such a diehard, you know, socialist, you're like, the Soviet Union should incorporate. If that's the case, then Afghanistan should have a plebiscite. There should have been a goddamn election. Do you want to become a part of the Soviet Union? It's on you. You can. It's your choice. If they would have, the Soviet Union would have proceeded that direction, hell, they might have already conquered half the world. But instead, they did socialism for one country, right? Good old fucking Stalin, right? Fucking pissed all over Trotsky and Lenin. Good old fucking shitty Stalin. Piece of shit. Fuck you, Stalin. Fuck Stalin. I don't feel like I'm being too controversial when I say fuck Mao Zedong, fuck Stalin, fuck you genocidal motherfuckers. You kill a million or more motherfucking people, you're a piece of shit. Fuck you. Fuck you, Stalin. Alright, so where was I? So he's going to say that Jimmy Carter is actually responsible for 500,000 up to 1 million people because of the war. So the Iran-Iraq war, he gave the green light to the war, he gave the green light. So, you know, Iraq is like, shit, should we do it, should we not? Hey, Jimmy, what are you saying? Jimmy's like, yeah, Iraq, you fucking invade that shit. And then, I mean, if that's the case, that's no good. Now, Jimmy Carter bragged he never fired a shot. He didn't fire a shot. None of these things, him giving weapons to the Mujahideen, allowing the Shah into the United States to get medical help, giving the A-OK for Iraq to invade Iran, none of that is firing a shot. None of that is aggression. None of that is taking new territory. None of that is imperialistic. So I think at the very, least, he didn't end the empire, but while he was in office, he did end the imperial, throne. The imperial presidency. He didn't fire a fucking shot. Not one goddamn bullet. The empire didn't fire a fucking bullet for 4 fucking years. I couldn't imagine the police. We had a Pax Americana for 4 years. I couldn't imagine the police not shooting Americans for a year or 2. Let alone the empire all over the world for 4 years. So, those are the 3 points of Jackson Hinkle, and I was going to the weapons to the Mujahideen. I think that's a good thing. That stops imperialism. And the war with Iran and Iraq, I don't know enough about. And allowing the Shah into the U.S., I'm sure that pisses off the Iranian revolutionaries. And so, can you say that because he allowed the Shah into the U.S. for medical help, motherfucker's old or something, right? Medical help, and then Iran versus Iraq. Iraq, it's its own nation. It's its own sovereign nation. Giving it the green light is a lot differently, different than like financing it and putting money, like what you giving weapons to the Mujahideen. That's like supporting a motherfucking thing, right? That's not like saying, hey, Mujahideen, you want to invade? All right, we give you the green light. Iraq wanted to invade. They wanted to do their own thing, so... And then allowing the Shah. So let's read about these 2 things real quick. History.com. So, President Carter hosts the Shah of Iran, November 15th, 1977. So, in the beginning of his presidency, he welcomes Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, and his wife, Empress, or Shah Banu Farah, to Washington. Over the next 2 days, Carter and Pahlavi discussed improving relations. 2 years later, the two leaders' political fates would be further entwined when Islamic fundamentalists overthrew the Shah and took Americans hostage in Tehran. In 1977, however, the U.S. and Iran enjoyed a friendly diplomatic relationship. Peace talks, this can't be what they're talking about, can it? No, it cannot. The stability was rocked when Pahlavi was disposed by Islamic fundamentalists. January 1979, replaced by a regime led by Ayatollah Khomeini. October, the exiled Shah came to the U.S. for cancer treatment. There you go. So the Iranians had a revolution. Islamic fundamentalists, which that doesn't sound revolutionary to me, to be honest with you. All of you installed a fucking theocracy. I thought revolutions are supposed to move shit forward. Alright, so Ayatollah Khomeini, October, the exiled Shah came to the U.S. for cancer treatment. That's what they're talking about. So right after this revolution, that'd be like Jefferson Davis. That would be like after Abraham Lincoln wins the Civil War, Jefferson Davis gets sick in France, or, China takes Jefferson Davis in and gives them medical help. Might be different because they were actively engaged in war. I'm not for sure. Carter's hospitality towards the Shah enraged a group of radical Iranian students who stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. November 4th, 1979, took 66 Americans hostage, and then the hostage crisis lasted 444 days. So for over a year, America is being fucking terrorized by these revolutionaries, right? And Carter's inability to secure their release contributed to his defeat by Ronald Reagan in the 1980 election. Then Ronald Reagan makes some backdoor agreement. Hey, Iran, I'll do what you want as long as you give us back those. That was the Iran-Contra scandal, right? So Ronald Reagan gets in there and he gives weapons to Iran, and then he calls South African, Nelson Mandela. He calls Nelson Mandela a terrorist, and he says Osama bin Laden is a freedom fighter. That's fucking Ronald Reagan. So the argument is he started this shit, and then Ronald Reagan takes it to whole nother heights because of accepting the Shah. That is what radicalized this and that, and now we get fucking Reagan. The American Empire never fired a single shot. And so Howard Zinn talks about the three holy wars. You got the Civil War, you got the American Revolution, you got World War II. You can't fuck with them three wars, but he does encourage us to think outside the box. Could we have stopped those wars? Because if we could stop the three holy wars, then maybe we could stop war altogether. And by criticizing Jimmy Carter, that's criticizing him to the left. I think that's smart. I think that's a good idea. He wasn't liberal in terms of, Nixon got more shit done than Carter. Carter was very ineffective. He was very ineffective. And the empire carried on, right? We still kept the military bases. They weren't shooting, there was no active wars. It was right after Vietnam, so everybody's like, okay, we got to be hesitant. Let's not just dive into another fucking conflict. But then Papa Bush says he ended the Vietnam syndrome with the Iraq invasion. So, what am I trying to say? I think Jackson Hinkle makes some interesting points. He's, criticizing Jimmy Carter from the left. Iran versus Iraq invasion. I got some information. Allowing the Shah. I don't really feel like allowing the Shah, even if you let Jefferson Davis, it's not like that lets the Confederate keep on fighting. If anything, you might have more control because, he needs your fucking doctor for cancer treatment. Okay, well, how about, why don't you sign this fucking peace agreement? Now, before we go ahead and take care of your cancer, now here's a fucking peace agreement. Sign this, motherfucker. Now, you're not in power no more. You're not in charge no more. Sign this, and we'll take care of your cancer. So maybe he could have done more instead of just saying, yeah, you can come on over, right? People come and go to the United States all the time for hospital shit. Well, he let the Shah into the, U.S., and then that just, that's when the whole dam cracked open, and now the whole village is drowned. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. Iran versus Iraq. Did Jimmy Carter give the wink and the nod and say, go on, Iraq? Maybe, I don't know. Let's see. The Iran-Iraq War, it began in 1980, and it lasted for 8 years, ended in a stalemate, August 20th, 1988, when Iran accepted a United Nations brokered ceasefire. Iraq's rationale for the invasion was primarily to cripple Iran, prevent Ayatollah Khomeini from exporting the 1979 Iranian Revolution. I'm getting a sense that Jimmy Carter did not like the Iranian Revolution, for good or for ill. And if this is anything like the French Revolution, you had George Washington that basically gave the middle finger to the French Revolution, and then that's going to cause Thomas Jefferson to resign. I think that's when America lost her way. We immediately started sucking the oppressor's fucking dick. The French had a revolution. Those were our fucking compadres. Those were our comrades. The French helped our revolution, and when they had a revolution, we didn't fucking help theirs. And so what did we do? We kissed and coddled our oppressors, and then shunned the French Revolution, and then, 10, 20 years later, you're going to see the White House get burnt down by the goddamn British. And so, yeah, we need to look at the world's liberated countries and their revolutions and their new constitutions, and we should export our revolution. That's for goddamn sure. And we should export socialism just for the fuck of it. I mean, clearly it's a good idea. A lot of people like it. Just take it. Just take it. We export democracy, socialism, capitalism. We export it all. So Iran versus Iraq. I don't know. There's going to be people that died. They say 500,000 Iraqi-Iranian soldiers died, in addition to 100,000 civilians. So that's a shit ton of people that died. The end of the war resulted in neither reparations nor border changes, so that was just like the War of 1812, right? Anno Dominion, whatever, so everything status quo antebellum, so whatever was before, it's the exact same. Nothing has changed, except for a shit ton of fucking people have died. So, if that can be put on, that's Iraq invading Iran, that's being against I think you have to make a judgment call on the Iranian Revolution, and I'm not for sure about the Iranian Revolution. I never did a deep dive into it. I've heard good and bad things, and so I don't know about the Iranian Revolution. Sometimes there's revolutions that aren't so revolutionary, and sometimes a nation needs, like Egypt had 3 or 4 revolutions, and they, dying of a revolution. Egypt is in need of a revolution right now, just like Cameroon. Chad just have a revolution. So we need to talk about Chad. So let's, Jackson Hinkle, a little bit more about...
explicit purpose of luring
and
installing U.S. bases around the Arabian Peninsula and in Saudi Arabia as well, as we all know. It is, that ties into the whole story of, Jimmy Carter, the person who opened the doors to the Carter Doctrine, to U.S. dominance, military dominance in the Persian Gulf, who opened the doors to Saddam Hussein invading Iran. He eventually got chemical weapons and killed 500,000 Iranians, and also 500,000 Iraqis were killed in that war. The guy who initially supported the Mujahideen and drew the Soviets into a war that killed 1 million people in Afghanistan, and also the guy who caused the U.S. hostage crisis in Iran because he wanted to continue supporting this U.S. puppet client state of the Shah in Iran. Anyone who would say that he's a benevolent leader, I think, just doesn't know their history. So take this for what you will. Maybe this is some new information to you guys. I hope it is.
So is Jimmy Carter benevolent? I don't know. He was ineffective. He didn't fire a bullet. He set a good standard. He set a good ideal standard. He set a good standard for, conduct. He also showed the American dream, right? A peanut fucking farmer. That's how America was so disillusioned after Nixon and Ford and Vietnam, the resignation, all right, fine. Let the fucking peanut farmer be president. And so he's kind of one of the holy presidents. But I think it's like Howard Zinn says, you know, just like Noam Chomsky, they say you're supposed to criticize the liberals because those are the gatekeepers. That's how far the Overton window. So you're supposed to criticize Zinn and Chomsky and really anybody that's leading on the left. Criticize even farther from the left because we do need to stop war. We need to stop imperialism. Jimmy Carter, you know, he's one of the holy presidents. So, you know, you had shitty Ronald Reagan that destroyed America. So it's kind of, remember the good old days of Jimmy Carter. But what the fuck did Jimmy Carter, he didn't do wrong. So I guess there's something to be said about doing no harm. But the last, I mean, Nixon gave us the EPA, so he at least did that. Jimmy Carter, what's Jimmy Carter's EPA? And LBJ, right, integrated America. And then also, you know, the Great Society, War on Poverty, bunch of shit, right? Great Society, integration, war, those are pretty big ones. War on Medicaid, Medicare. You know, so LBJ was probably the, you know, I would say the biggest liberal Democrat, the biggest, you know, change maker president that America's had. It was before my life. I was born in '82, so Reagan was. So I've never had a president that was ever a change maker. No American president in the last 40 years have been a goddamn change maker. So, Les Miserables, right? We the people know. You the people. Whose streets? Their streets. For 40 more something years, probably, right? The presidents, they'll keep on taking over everything, and we just go along with their shit. Don't change nothing, everything, it's all the same. Nothing fundamentally is going to change. Anyways. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't agree, Jackson, Hinkle. The Iran versus Iraq, if he said, okay, I think Saddam Hussein wanted some Iran action, so that's whoever's, but I guess we did give them both weapons, and we're thinking we're so fucking smart letting them kill each other, but that's, you know, that is sick and fucked up. We didn't fire a shot. Weapons to the Mujahideen, I think, is good to stop imperialism, allowing the Shah into America. Maybe he shouldn't have done that, but maybe he should have. I don't know. You know, the Iranian Revolution, how good was the Iranian Revolution? And allowing the Shah into America for cancer treatment, maybe we could have sent him off to Canada or some shit, I don't know. And he's just going to let the old fucking bastard die, and then that gives you a goodwill. You can, you know, maybe could have pressured him to get, you know, some concessions or some shit. Then the Iranian Revolution, they already won, so I don't even know what the fucking problem is. Jefferson Davis, like, if he would have got some help in China after the Civil War was over, who gives a fuck? During the Civil War, that's different. That's like an act of treason, right? But after the fact, after you won, I mean, after you won, it's just kind of, he's a fucking old-ass man or whatever. I don't know. Maybe we should try. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people died, slavery. Maybe we should have tried him for war crimes, right? And did some Nuremberg, you know, stringing them up like they did in Nuremberg. But that's a different topic now altogether now, isn't it? Now, isn't it? Jackson Hinkle, I'll give you 10 seconds.
If you know anyone who has made that argument that Jimmy Carter is some sort of a kind leader that didn't do anything wrong in the Middle East, maybe share this video with them, because it was an eye-opener for me when I learned just how terrible he was in the Middle East and how he really started the U.S. war on terror in a lot of ways in the late 70s in the Middle East. And, yeah, I think the only way that we can correct our wrongs moving forward is
I mean, it was Baby Bush, right? Baby Bush is the one that started the war on terror. Reagan was doing some fighting terror. And actually, in a way, didn't terror start the war on terror by just being terrible? Nah, I don't know.